Welcome once again, lacrosse friends, to Lacrosse Link, your link to all things lacrosse. I am Steven Stamp, your host. Very excited to have you back for what is another great episode of the show. We're going to get to the rundown with lots of exciting NLL news and taking a look at the Super Sixes that went down last weekend in Sparks, Maryland. And our guests are all about Super Sixes right now, although they're both also NLL stars as well. We start with Dillon Ward, goalie for the Colorado Mammoth, and the goaltender for Canada. One of the three goalies who played for Canada in Sparks at the Super Sixes event. Great conversation as always with him. And then we speak with Kyle Jackson of the Haudennosaunee Nationals. He is also a member of the Halifax Thunderbirds. Again, a great conversation with Kyle. Always enjoy talking with these guys. We did try to set up a talk with one of the U.S. women's team members. Do appreciate Connor Ford trying to help set things up there. Just didn't work out to get in on time for our broadcast, our recording schedule. So thanks to U.S. Lacrosse for trying it out. We will get someone from the U.S. side on a future show in the near future. But for now, Dillon Ward, Kyle Jackson, right here on Lacrosse Link.
Beautiful play, Aaron Gray Eyes. He is having himself a tournament. He made the save regardless of the crease call, and that shows he is at his acrobatic. In the middle, it just bounces off, but it's picked up and scored.
For the biggest, that's a comma and a comma and a comma. Gotta get it.
And it's a ticket talking Mazda for the biggest. That's a comma and a comma and a comma. Gotta get it.
Very pleased to have on Lacrosse Link Dillon Ward, goalie for the Colorado Mammoth, and most recently for Canada at the Super Sixes. Welcome to the show, and we are recording this time, so we're good to go.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
You bet. So, very curious your impression of the Super Sixes in Sparks, Maryland. It was an interesting, certainly exciting tournament. I'm curious what it was like from a player's perspective because it's such a new discipline, such a new experience.
Yeah, I think you just saying new is basically how it describes what we were going through as players. We practiced on Friday, and we did a lot of like odd man situations, a lot of like box style practice, and we didn't really know what to expect getting into the games. It was new for every player, every coach. They did a little game of it last year at the Fall Classic, but other than that, we really didn't know what to expect. So it was kind of a trial by fire, and we enjoyed it. It was competitive, and anytime you get to put on the Canada jersey and you're playing against other nations, there's always going to be that competitive edge to it. But I think they have something. I think they have something with Sixes.
The competitiveness was certainly there. You had 3 one-goal games, an overtime win over the Haudennosaunee, then a 1-goal loss to the U.S., a 1-goal win over the Haudennosaunee on Sunday, and then a 6-goal win over the U.S., the biggest spread for you guys of the weekend. So again, the competitiveness was there. I'm curious what it felt like from a goalie's perspective to be, first of all, giving up a lot of goals, as everyone's kind of noticed, and just how you roll with that and how your role on the team compares to, a regular box or field game when things are kind of different and halfway in between.
Yeah, I mean, it's fast. It's really, really fast. And, the 30-second shot clock, you really do have to move on quick, whether you make a save, you get scored on, you make a mistake, whatever it is. You just have to move on quick. And, obviously getting scored on a lot isn't the greatest thing in the world for goalies, but, it's the nature of the game. And, like I said, you get scored on, you have to pick up the ball and get going right away. So having that quick memory is key in playing Sixes. And then, kind of the role we were trying to just figure things out this weekend was a lot of just, working with Brody and talking to him about what I'm seeing and what he's thinking and kind of just ping ponging back and forth on each other on what we wanted to do defensively. And I think by the end of the weekend, that second game against the U.S., we had a pretty good idea of how we wanted to play defensively.
Is the communication different for you as a goalie versus box or versus regular field in terms of what you're sharing with your teammates, how much you're talking?
It's closer to field, whereas I am communicating a lot and I am talking to guys a lot about what I'm looking from them and what I want them to do. But also with it being such a short shot clock, it's not as much me talking through the entire defense. It's more or less like talking to the guy who's on ball and then maybe talking to one other person about, hey, we need you to hedge over or something like that, rather than in full on field lacrosse where it's much slower. I can communicate to the entire defense of basically what I want from every person out there. So it's more or less just talking to the guy covering the ball carrier and then maybe one other person.
Goaltending is always critical in the game of lacrosse. It seems maybe even more so now. We talked about all the goals, how high scoring it can be, how there's so many chances if a team is down a bit to come back. It seems like every save, if you can make a few saves, it can be even more important because there are going to be so many scored and so many of the possessions result in goals. And I thought a great example was the stretch you guys had against the U.S. in the second game where you got about 5 or 6 goals in a row. You made a couple of key saves or a few defensive turnovers caused, and that seemed to really swing the momentum. And honestly, I mean, the U.S. fought back. They're obviously very good. That seemed to be the difference in the whole game. And it's a series of a few possessions.
Absolutely. And, the thing with sixes, with the games being so short and everything, everything's very quick, every single mistake or every single decision you make is just that much more amplified. So you score a goal, it means that much more. You make a save, it means that much more. You take a penalty, every single penalty is full-time serve. So you have an opportunity to score multiple goals on a 30-second penalty or a 1-minute penalty. So really every single decision that's made or every single thing that happens is amplified that much more just with how short everything is.
You touch on playing defense and penalties, and one of the things that really stood out, obviously, Graham Hossack took a whole bunch of penalties, and to me it didn't look like anything egregious. I didn't, for the most part, honestly know what most of the calls were for, and I'm curious. They've talked about they're 80% on the way to having the rules set. They want to make some tweaks. Is defense and being able to play a little bit more physically one that you think needs to be made?
Well, from our understanding, they want the rules for the guys and girls game to be as close as possible. And obviously, a contact is a huge difference between the men's game and the women's game. The problem with sixes right now is it's very hard to play defense, and there's no real. It's really hard to stop someone like a Haudennosaunee that you saw this weekend from just putting their head down and running to the goal because you really can't hit them. And it's really hard to angle someone out like that who's so strong. So I think they do need to do something in terms of a rule that can kind of benefit the defense there, whether it's something like a charge call, because it is very hard for like a Graham Hossack who is so big and so strong. He's almost at a disadvantage playing the set of rules as they were called this weekend. But again, I think that's just the players getting used to it, the refs getting used to it. Where can you kind of let guys go with some stuff? Where do you need to call things exactly the way that the rule is written? So it's just like, it's more or less just the players, the refs, and the world lacrosse trying to figure out what best works for this game.
And I agree with you what you said earlier. They've got something here. There's some excitement. There's definitely the kernel of something, but needs a bit of work.
Yeah.
One last question, just to shift gears a bit. You've got Mammoth training camp coming up, NLL season getting started, big announcement of the ESPN deal, the TSN deal announced earlier. Do you guys start this weekend or next weekend coming up? And how excited are you for the indoor season to get?
Yeah, so we go next weekend. So I got 1 week off in between the sixes, but we're really excited. Obviously, the ESPN news coming out today is huge news for the league. And just lacrosse in general, ESPN, obviously everyone in the US is very familiar with that. So for us to have access to their platform is definitely massive for the league. And then for the Mammoth, I think we're just very excited about the team that we're bringing in this year and the players that we're bringing to camp. I got to see Ron John play this weekend for the Haudennosaunee. Incredibly athletic, excited to see what he's going to be able to bring to us in the back end and in transition. And, I think we just have a very, very good lineup, something that we're really excited about, both offensively and defensively. So it's going to be an exciting camp. It's going to be really competitive with 2 draft classes coming in. And I think once it's all said and done from training camp, I think we're going to be really excited about the product we're going to be putting out there.
Yeah, I think you got really good value in getting Ron John. I think it was 18 in the 2020 draft. That's a good pick. You can see why Brad Self scrambled to make a deal to be able to get him when he dropped to that spot. Dillon Ward, thanks so much for coming on. Really appreciate your time, and looking forward to seeing you in NLL after checking you out in the Sixes this weekend.
Absolutely. Thanks again for having me.
Hi, this is Jaden with Al Anderson Source for Sports. Excited to tell you that we got all our new lacrosse product in for this upcoming season. Whether you're playing box or field, our lacrosse experts are going to make sure we get you into the right equipment to elevate your game. At Al Anderson Source for Sports, we know our stuff.
All right, we are joined by Kyle Jackson of the Haudennosaunee Nationals. Great to have you on the show. Nice to catch up again. Welcome to Lacrosse Link.
Awesome. Thanks for having me. I truly appreciate it.
It is very exciting, and it was an exciting weekend. I know you didn't want to lose 4 games, obviously, going into Sparks, but what exciting games and a lot of learning going on. What were your impressions overall of the Super Sixes tournament in the first time that we saw these elite teams, the Haudenosaunee, US and Canada, playing?
You definitely hit the nail on the head. You said that there was a lot of learning, and that was definitely it. I went in with really zero expectations, and to put everything into perspective, when I heard that it was sixes, I originally thought it's going to be 6-on-6. Did not realize that it was 5-on-5, 6 including the goalie. So that's kind of how naive I was entering the whole atmosphere of this realm of lacrosse that is new to everybody. So yeah, there's a massive learning curve for not just myself, but also the coaches as well. And the biggest thing that I really learned was that it's very strategic, and it's formatted in kind of a similar sense to basketball, where if you just equate the actual inbounding of basketball to the goalie picking the ball out of the net as the 400th goal of the game is scored, it's a very similar game and concept to that of basketball. So a lot of learning, but I thoroughly enjoyed myself. It was extremely fast paced, but I think that the game caters to the game that I like to play. So I had a lot of fun playing it.
You scored about 100 of those 400 goals. I don't actually know the full number, but I mean, you got 7 in one game. Obviously, going very well for you. You seem pretty well suited to this. I'm curious. I think a lot of people watching it, getting used to the Sixes game. There's some negatives, some positives. People enjoying the excitement, but I think one feeling is maybe it's a bit too easy to score sometimes as a forward. Do you agree, or are you just like, no, goals are good?
Yeah, no, I think that's a good take. I think that it's easier to score. But it's still not easy. Like, you're working with athletes at the end of the day on both ends of the field now. And I had touched on this talking to Brendan Bonberry post game and multiple times, that you really need to be multifaceted in this game. You can't really just be a great offensive player or a great defensive player. You have to be kind of a Swiss Army knife in that sense. And you have to be competent on both the defensive and offensive end in order to be successful. And then also you've got to be in tremendous shape, because you can't really just run on the field, run off. It takes too long. The shot clock's too short. So you have to be able to get down and up the field, and really in order to be successful. So it's easier to score, but it's still not easy, because you're at the end of the day playing against premier top end talent. So it's easier, but it's still not easy for sure.
One of the notes is, I mean, with the substitutions, coaches are going to figure it out. Athletes are going to figure it out. And you could see substitution patterns changing through the course of the weekend. Teams kind of getting a feel for what they wanted to do. I know your coach said he wasn't even giving you direction, I don't think, or maybe it was John Grant or Brody Merrill. One of the coaches. There's been a lot of info from the weekend, a lot of games, saying, we didn't even really give them cues. On the first day of the games, want to see how it would go, and then we kind of figured things out. It's a big learning curve, but I'm wondering how that whole process came about, developing the substitution patterns, how much you wound up playing defense as a primarily offensive guy, and how that looks going forward.
Yeah, Coach Milliman really, he said to multiple sources that he didn't have any substitution patterns, and he really didn't. And it was more about us just kind of finding our groove, knowing that you're going to have to play defense at some point. So why not just integrate yourself into the climate of this Sixes avenue and play defense and offense? So it didn't really matter if we had defensive players, they were forced to play offense. We didn't really go offense defense at any point for the most part. I think that when the younger guys had went in, that was a time where they were kind of taking advantage of that offense defense role, but really not as much as even like a Team Canada was with certain players. We were really getting up and down the field. So I ended up playing a lot of defense, but I like being kind of a two-way midi. I like being on the field, gives you the most opportunity to get touches and get integrated with the game. So I played a lot of defense, and it was something. I thoroughly enjoy playing defense because, again, you've got to be a great athlete. I pride myself on trying to be a great athlete, so I try to play defense as much as possible, and I ended up playing a lot of it this past weekend.
And it's not brand new for you, right? Because you played some transition in junior with KW, if I recall correctly, before you entered the pros.
Yeah, I played transition there. I was a two-way midi when I was at the Hill Academy as well. I wasn't even good enough to just strictly be an offensive midi while I was there. We had way too much talent. So I've played on the defensive end multiple times, and I've gotten a little bit away from it, but I definitely don't shy away from it if I don't have to.
One of the factors, of course, is that the substitutions can be similar to box lacrosse, but the field's a bit bigger than a rink. It's a little bit further to go. I know some folks were talking about, you've got to be really aware when you're heading to the bench, how far it is that you've got to travel.
Absolutely. And if you are going to go, it's a full out sprint, because by the time if you have a D guy coming off sprinting full speed and you've got an offensive guy going on, if we're talking about a 30-second shot clock, by the time the ball gets over half, let's call it 5 seconds off there. So you're working with 25 seconds. By the time that offensive guy gets to, maybe it's the other side of the field, maybe you're working with 18 seconds left in the shot clock. So that's where it kind of gets intricate, and you've really got to be strategic with how you're doing things out there on the field, because with a 30-second shot clock, it dwindles away really quickly. And so if you're not strategic in the proper manner, you end up with 10, 15 seconds, and that's just simply not enough to really get a good feel and a good groove out there on the offensive end, and both defensively as well, because you've got guys just sprinting on the defensive end and not really being able to pick up matchups. The game's too fast. There's too much transition. Guys will give a quick hitch, come topside, and you've got a guy sprinting full speed down the alley. Guy comes topside. It's an easy goal. So it's strategic, but it's tough.
And we saw, when somebody gets up top, the ball's loose and they're gone. There's no catching anybody in that length of field. If it's somebody, we saw guys like Zach Currier and Latrell Harris and yourself, Jeremy Thompson, Brendan Bomber, you mentioned some guys with some wheels. Once they're gone, there's no room to catch anybody either, right? If you're not in position before they get the breakout.
Absolutely. And in all honesty, because it was the first time we really played, like, you kind of got to think in the mentality of, all right, well, we're going to have to get back up the field. There's no face off. So if this guy is already, let's call it 5-10 steps ahead of me, and he's already over half, the field's so short, is it worth me working extremely hard to get there? Or do I try to play my percentages, maybe let him take a shot, maybe he misses, there's no backup, so you're automatically getting the ball back. Maybe your goalie makes a great save. Now you've got transition going the other way because cherry picked a little bit, but that's kind of where the strategy comes into place, where if you're going to have to get up and down the field, the lineup is short with 12 people. That's including a goalie. So that's just where my mind goes on everything. It's like, do you really chase the guy as hard as you possibly can, exhaust yourself, but can't get back up the field, and then you're useless? So kind of when those speed demons get out there and they take the ball, you've got to put that brain on a little bit and think strategically.
Yeah, think long term and not just what's going to happen in this particular play.
Exactly.
Yeah. A situation arose where Warren Hill got injured a bit. You guys just had the one goalie dressed. So Ron John puts on the gear at halftime, I believe it was, and goes out and plays. I'm wondering what that was like for you guys. How you feel? Obviously it's going to be short rosters. There's not going to be a ton of guys. You have to make, again, a strategic decision. Do you dress two goalies to be ready, or do you dress somebody else who can step into net? What was that whole situation like for you guys?
Very interesting. I can't say I've really ever played in a game where something like that happens. And I think for Warren's sake, it's kind of like more of a maintenance thing. You didn't want to risk anything. We've got training camp coming up. So it's this is a new environment. Yes, we're working to win games and ultimately be successful, but it's the first time we're ever playing this. What risk does he really have to keep playing? So I think he made the executive decision and pulled himself. And then we had Ranjan go in and kind of stole the show, I think, for the entire weekend, because he made a bunch of big saves, kept us in the game, and we ended up being able to make a little bit of a comeback, falling short. But because of him, we were able to stay in that game. I think he made a couple doorstep saves. We were trying to eliminate the outside shots because he absolutely didn't want to see those, and he wanted the in tight ones. And when we gave him those, he ended up making some big stops. But it was kind of cool to see him jump in there and do that, because you don't really get that in a whole lot of other atmospheres, for sure.
Yeah, the face save was the big one, right? Where he just right off the mask and up out of play. We are running out of time. Really great to chat with you, Kyle. Always good to catch up. Looking forward very much to seeing you in an NLL game as camps are right around the corner. So much happening. Thanks for taking the time to come and join us here on Lacrosse Link.
Absolutely. Thank you very much for having me. I appreciate it.
All right, lacrosse friends, thanks for being with us through some great interviews, focusing on the Super Sixes competition. We're going to touch on that here in the rundown, but we've got some other news, some big news this week to get to. To start with, the big news for the National Lacrosse League. Previously, the TSN deal was announced. Now, the NLL announcing that games will be on ESPN and ESPN Plus. Very exciting, a broad distribution. This is a huge deal. There's a lot of excitement being stoked. You can tell from the level of excitement just on lacrosse Twitter that people are really fired up about this. It's going to be a big deal. And you can only imagine how exciting it's going to be for everyone once the games actually get started. I think one really cool note, this is not just a US deal. Again, the TSN deal is focusing on Canada. The ESPN deal does focus on the US, but it also is very clear in the release that it's going to be an international deal as well. I know that there is a growing and passionate audience for box lacrosse around the world. For those of you who are regular viewers of Lacrosse Link, you know that. You've seen that we have guests. And if you listen to my podcast, Laxbeat, you see the international flavor that is really growing. I think this is only going to help to spur that. Lots of excitement coming. And I think it's excellent that the NLL is tapping into that larger, broader international audience. Some other NLL news, a few big signings to note. One, Curtis Dixon, Superman, is back for a year in Calgary. There'd been some debate about, some discussion about, why it was taking so long to get him signed. It can be tricky to get deals done. But Dixon back in Calgary, and he immediately said he's their championship or bust. The Roughnecks looking to defend their title from the 2019 season. Holy cow, it's been a long time since we had a championship. It is going to be so exciting to get back to it. Another big signing is Aaron Bold inking in Halifax for 1 year. Now, it was announced the day after the Super Sixes tournament at which Warren Hill, Halifax's starting goaltender last year, left with an injury. Not going to read too much into it. I don't imagine they just called Aaron Bold the day that Warren Hill was hurt or the day after. But you got to think they were talking, they were working on things. But hopefully, nothing too serious for Warren Hill. He looked in pretty good spirits on the sideline. But Aaron Bold, a real veteran presence to give Halifax a 1-2 punch. It'll be interesting to see if he can get back to his glory days when he was one of the best goaltenders in the National Lacrosse League, won a Champions Cup MVP award. And Randy Stotts signing in Panther City after they traded for him, a 3-year deal. That is a huge deal for Panther City. They are pretty stoked to get his name on the dotted line. They're clear. Bob Hamley made it pretty clear. They don't know if he'll play this year with the knee surgery he had to have, but they certainly will be hoping that he will play. If not this year, that he'll be ready to roll and at full capacity the following season. But they know that he is going to be a big step for their development as an expansion team when he comes. Not such great news for his little brother, Austin, who will undergo knee surgery. It was announced just in the last couple of days. It would look like he is out for the season. good for them, the San Diego Seals, that they signed Dane Doby, that they've got Casey Jackson back and healthy, that they've got Zach Greer re-signed, and they have Mac O'Keefe as a draft pick from last year. So lots of depth on the left side, but you hate to lose Austin Stotts. And from a fan's perspective, he is one of the most exciting players in the game to watch. So a real shame. We may not have any Stottses in the league this year, but here's pulling for both of them to come back fully healthy and quickly. And other Panther City signings, they signed a bunch of players. One really notable one to me, very interesting, a guy I've watched play a lot. He is exciting. Roope Jokela from Finland, plays for the Turku Titans. And he went to their free agent camp. He's actually staying at Tracy Koluski's house in Peterborough. So he is available to go to the main camp. And Bob Hamley said, hey, I looked at TK on this one, and they were very impressed with what Roope Jokela did in the free agent tryout camp. He is going to go to main camp. There could be a spot for him. They have a handful of lefty forwards on the roster, but nobody really locked in other than Ryan Benesh. They've got some rookies and some other players who haven't really been in the league a lot. So a chance for Roope Jokela as the Finnish invasion resumes. Joachim Miller, Tracy Koluski brought to Philadelphia. He played a handful of games, didn't really work out in a D-tranny role. We'll see how Jokela does. He is exciting. He can shoot it on the run coming across the top of the offensive formation. He's really skilled. We're going to touch a little bit on the pros and cons of the Sixes weekend, the Super Sixes. For some real in-depth analysis, go see Terry Foy's writing on InsideLacrosse.com. He is a master, and I thought he did a great job. I'm just going to touch on a few things. There were 363 goals in 385 minutes of playing time, according to World Lacrosse. That's exciting. The games were close and competitive. 3 of the 4 men's games decided by a single goal, and the other one, Canada beating the U.S. by 6. But really, it was decided, that margin was decided in a brief run where Canada got really hot defensively and had some transition goals. Other than that, that game was very close as well. The pace of play is fast and exciting on the men's and women's side. There's some great stuff happening. World Lacrosse got out highlight videos very quickly, some very cool stuff to promote it, really helped to build the excitement for the game. I would say a few cons. I think players have to be able to check more. It's challenging because they want the men and women's games to be the same, as similar as possible, and they're not going to add a lot of physicality to the women's game. There's a bit of checking with the women, but to me, watching Graham Hossack play and just taking penalty after penalty when it didn't look like he was doing much, I think is a challenge that needs to be addressed. I just don't know how you do it. A few little things was kind of hard to find the scores. You have to go to a USA Lacrosse story to find the scores just all together in one place where you can get box scores. A little more availability would be great. The broadcast was a bit shaky. It was great to see. It was great. It was streamed. I don't know if the announcers, Amanda Mastera, Jordan Johnson, and Tari Karamari had all the information they needed. Or, I mean, things are obviously, it's new. A lot of stuff's being sorted out. It'd be great if they had more information available. Things like, I didn't know penalties were completely non-releasable until I talked to a player after the tournament. That kind of stuff would be great to know. Just a bit more detail and information, insight as we're going into what's happening, because it is such a new discipline. But again, lots of challenges, lots of stuff being figured out. Overall, pretty good stuff. The rosters are small. We saw in one game the challenge with only being able to have one goalie. If you have a second goalie, you only get 10 runners and 2 goalies. If you have one goalie, you can have 11 runners. The Haudennosaunee Nationals went with one goalie, Warren Hill. When he got hurt, Ron John had to step in. He actually did quite a good job, but that could really be a bit of a mockery if you have to put a runner in to play net. It's a challenge because the IOC and the World Games have said quite clearly they don't want huge rosters. So what are you going to do? You have to work with them because that is part of the point of having this new discipline. So there's needs to be a way to work it out. Maybe there is no way and you just have to make decisions. Do you take another player who may not be as good a player or the best player for running, but can play up front and can step in as a backup goalie if you need? That's going to be one of the challenges for World Lacrosse to work out and for the teams to figure out as they head forward to Birmingham 2022 and on to, of course, the hopeful inclusion in the Olympics in LA. So those are my thoughts so far. A lot of excitement with the Sixes. We'll We'll see how it all works out. I think they've got some things to tweak, but as Dillon Ward said in the show, there's something there. There's the nugget of something. Thanks so much, Lacrosse friends, for being with us here on Lacrosse Link. Please remember to subscribe, ding the bell, share with all your friends, and keep coming back every week to Lacrosse Link. I'm Steven Stamp, your host here at Lacrosse Link, your link to all things lacrosse.
Gotta get it